Good evening. Happy Sunday. Come on in the space. Come on in the space. I'm so excited to be here with you. I'm actually traveling and I had planned to actually pre record this, but I didn't. I was able to be live, but this is not my normal setup. So hopefully everything will go smoothly. I fully expect that it will. As I said, I am traveling. I have just spent very few, not enough, but a few lovely days with some of the people that I love, who love me the most. And it's been absolutely delicious and so needy. But I almost messed it up by being a little greedy. And as I was prepping for this trip, I had an opportunity to go on another trip, right? So I was getting ready for this trip. I was doing all the things that you do when you are trying to get out of town, trying to figure out what I needed to bring with me, trying to figure out how I needed to finish some tasks, running errands, getting packed. And then I had this other invitation, and it had a lot of elements that I really enjoy. So there is warmth and water and working out. And it included some learning and lounging on the beach. So great elements that I enjoy. But when I got the details a couple of days before I actually had to travel for this flight, my flight for this flight, I realized it was a really quick turnaround. So like a couple of days. And my logistics brain just started churning. And I immediately felt overwhelmed. And yet, I still debated whether or not to go on the second trip. Before I tell you what I decided and what that has to do with the topic we're discussing, just let me introduce myself. I am Renita Alexander, the Leadership Locksmith, and this is Set It Up Sunday. Set It Up Sunday is my weekly conversation about all the decisions that we make and the roles that we play to be intentional about what it is that we're trying to create. And so we define success however we define it personally, but we are all making decisions about our success, whether it's a daily decision, something about how we're spending our week, our month, our year, our life. And so I have been talking about self awareness. I started about 3 weeks ago talking about self awareness, and that is just the discovery, the understanding of who we are, who our strengths are, our values are, what it is that we believe. And so I've been talking about those things. So I started again with self awareness, which I describe as a strategic strength. So whether we are leading others or just leading ourselves, that self awareness is a strategic strength. But one of the things that we sometimes discover when we are becoming more aware of ourselves is there are some gaps, and that's when we create a development plan to figure out what it is that we need to do and to learn, or maybe to get better at, to go where we're trying to go. That is self development. And then, of course, we have to have the discipline to actually execute our plan. So I talked about that last week, and I hinted at this week's topic, which is self sabotage. But I'm going to describe that in just a minute. Back to my story. So I was thinking, I was considering, I was pondering doing something that was absolutely overwhelming me in the present moment. I was overwhelmed. I was, I can't do this. And while this other trip had some elements I enjoy, they also weren't what I needed to be doing, what I needed to be concentrating on in the present moment, or even in anticipation of the following week. So, now what does that have to do with self sabotage? Well, I'm glad you asked. When you overcommit, you run the risk of damaging your health to do what you committed to do, or not doing what you committed to do and being out of alignment with your values or your goals, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just one of those behaviors associated with self sabotage. Okay, so there are others, and if you are familiar with some other behaviors associated with self sabotage, please just put those in the comments. I would appreciate that. And by the way, if you are watching me on live on Facebook or LinkedIn, be sure and give StreamYard permission to to um, to show your name just so that I know who's here. But anyway, back to self sabotage. I'm gonna just give you a more in depth description. Self sabotage occurs when we damage our physical, mental, emotional, our spiritual health, our deliberately sabotage or hinder our own success and sense of well being by undermining our personal goals, our personal values, the things that we have decided that we want to do. The thing about self sabotage, it can be conscious, but it also can be unconscious. And it really all just depends on your level of awareness. There's that awareness word that I talk a lot about. So, conscious self sabotage is when you do something that you know is contrary to your goals. And, we all do it all the time. So, I really shouldn't be doing this or eating this or behaving in this way. So, it's like, choosing a sugary snack. Sugar is evil when your goal is to eat healthy. But unconscious self sabotage happens when a personal goal or a value has been undermined, but you don't even recognize that that's what's happening. So, for example, I'm a learner. I love to read. It's my preferred way of learning. I've been a reader since I was before I started school. And I love to share what I learn when I read. But I realized, and it wasn't that long ago, that sometimes my learning gets in the way of my doing the things I need to be doing. And so, you could call it perfectionism. I recently learned a new term. There's that learner in me, which is the over research or over learning cycle. And that is a quest for clarity and versus perfectionism, which is kind of what I was calling it, which is the drive to appear, feel, or be perfect. So, but whatever you call it, be it perfectionism as I'm learning new things or over learning or over research, I was stuck. And I realized that I was stuck, and it was because of this thing. So there are other very common signs of self-sabotage, some of which you may be familiar with. Procrastination, which is waiting until the last minute, maybe one that you are familiar with. But another one is pessimism, and that is that, quickness to point out the negative versus the positive. And that's just speaks to mindset. But if you are negative about the thing that you are choosing to do, what is the likelihood of you actually taking the action to do it? And so that is how pessimism can sabotage your goals or whatever it is you're trying to do. Playing small. Now, you've heard about imposter syndrome, or this idea of being phony. Well, that is, when we are being less than we are really called to be. And it can come from imposter syndrome. It can come from an external source. It can be when we're trying something new. That self-doubt that sometimes creeps into our brain when we're doing something new. But it also can stop us from even pursuing or being the best that we can be in the position that we're in. Passive aggressive behavior can also be considered self sabotage, because you are, maybe being away or showing up in a way that's not going to get you what you want. And of course, we all sometimes engage in things that we recognize as distracting behavior, be it playing, games, video games, or scrolling social media on our phones, or just watching TV mindlessly. And another big sign of self sabotage is burnout. So when we are, overwhelmed, like, I kind of allowed myself to be, or we're maybe doing more than we need to do and not taking care of ourselves physically and mentally and emotionally, and allowing ourselves to experience burnout. So, where does self sabotage come from? Well, it is, rooted in mindsets, counterproductive mindsets, which can include, some negative thoughts, being disorganized, being indecisive, and, negative self taught. And it stems from the way that we're socialized, or it may be the result of trauma we've experienced. And it's often an external voice that told us something about ourselves that did, or maybe it even didn't include us. So, a voice, that authoritative voice that didn't see us, right? So didn't include us. But, and it could be an authority figure, a parent, a coach, a teacher, what we see on social media, what we see on the news, what we see in, whatever is streaming into our homes, be it, music, or our movies, or our television, whatever it is. we've internalized it we've internalized it, and now it is keeping us stuck. Now, that doesn't, discount the real obstacles, or sometimes the sabotage that comes from external sources. So I'm not saying that those don't exist. Obviously they do. But to figure out if it's external or internal, I think the first step is being curious. What is causing me to feel stuck? What is causing me to not reach what it is I'm trying to reach? What's causing me not to achieve the goals that I have set for myself? And so that first thing always is being curious. And then, of course, once you have been curious and asked yourself some questions, maybe done some reflection, just being aware, reminding yourself that, okay, these are some of the things I've discovered. I talked about over commitment. So you're aware of it. Okay, I have a tendency to overcommit. So one of the ways to counter that is to, maybe practice just saying no when you are feeling that you're overwhelmed. Just saying no and being okay with saying that. So that, but that requires some awareness to be able to know that that is a tendency for you. In the research cycle, maybe just doing enough research to take the next step, whatever that step is that you have identified in your development plan. So, I talk about a lot about curiosity and awareness and reflection. Some of the other things that you can do is to challenge those things that you are maybe believing about yourself. How true is that thing that you're believing? And if you asked a friend, somebody that that cares about you, would they agree with whatever that assessment is that you have created about yourself? Be it, especially when it comes to like perfectionism or imposter syndrome, feeling that you are not enough. Well, somebody might remind you that you are. Some other things that you can do to sort of overcome some of the self-sabotaging behavior. What would you call, somebody who's maybe doing the opposite of what you're doing or what you're telling yourself? What would you say? What would you how would they respond to the reality that you might be telling yourself if they're doing the opposite of what you're doing? So, it's really about, being curious, being aware of your challenging and challenges, and then maybe challenging what it is that you're experiencing and believing about yourself. And then always, and I talk about this most of the time when I'm talking about social media, when I'm talking about setting yourself up, and when I'm talking about all the things that sort of get in our way, is this idea of grace. And that is giving yourself some grace to start again. Every day is an opportunity to start all over with whatever it is that we have envisioned for ourselves. We're always becoming the best version of ourselves, and sometimes we take a couple of steps forward, and then we get stuck, or we even backtrack a little bit. So that happens in life, but always be ready to give yourself some grace and to try again the next day. So whatever it is that you're trying to do to not self-sabotage. All right, so my time is up. I will be talking about in depth about all the things that stop us from being what we're supposed to be, some of those self-sabotaging behaviors, starting in December. It's my Unblock Your Barriers Masterclass, and it starts on December 11th, and there's going to be a couple of components for it. I will have that registration information in the comments for this. Wherever you are seeing this, there'll be some registration information in the comments. That is my time. I so glad that you joined me. I don't take it for granted that you are here either live or that you stopped by to see what I had to say. I appreciate it. And I'll be right back here in my normal place next Sunday for Set It Up Sunday. I hope you join me. Have a great evening.